I just watched Echo and stormed into this incredibly cold room to do this review. It's going to be a little chaotic because I don't really have a script, I just have some bullet points, and my hair looks like I've been wearing a hood for the last 3 hours because I have. Also, I expect there will probably be some mild spoilers because I might want to get into examples that back up my criticisms. Because here's the thing, it's not very good. I worry sometimes about criticizing something that's progressive, because it is progressive, but I worry that people on the left might call you some sort of bigot, and people on the right might think that you're on their side, and neither is true. Sometimes a show is just bad, and that is the case with this. Before I get into why, I would like to highlight some of the good things, because there are some good things. It's a little dark. It's not Punisher level dark, but it's a little dark, which I think is nice to see. It's a nice change. I think the people who watched Iron Man, the first one, as a child, are probably about the right age to start getting some gritty stuff. The few actual fights that are in the show are pretty well done, but there aren't that many of them. I'm glad they kept the Kingpin from the Netflix series. I'm glad that he has been the Kingpin throughout, because he is the perfect casting. And Alaqua Cox, she's fine. I wasn't blown away by her, but she isn't what's bad with the show. So yeah, now to what is bad. It is very, very cliched, to the point where you can pretty much map out how a scene will go based on the cliches. At the start, for instance, there's a moment where I realized, oh, I can pretty much write this in my mind on the fly with the show. For instance, the next thing I thought would happen is tragic accident, cut to her in the gym. Pretty much right. Then there was a scene where she's spying on her cousin, which, by the way, has some very weird writing, as it almost makes them seem like a couple. Anyway, she's spying on her cousin from like 400 meters away, quite far away. And I'm sat there thinking, please do not do the thing where she looks over her shoulder as she can sense that she's being spied on. She does. On top of the cliches, I think it just has some generally pretty poor writing throughout. It is wildly inconsistent. One moment she's unable to deal with 3 random rednecks with one gun between them. Then the next she's easily destroying Kingpin's army of armed goons. One scene she's unable to mend her leg and has to go to someone to get it repaired. Then the next she builds a gun, basically, from spare rollerblade parts. And I'm sat there thinking, wow, Obadiah Stane from Iron Man 1 is going to be pretty impressed with this if he's still around. And then there's this other moment where she injures her leg as she has it repaired. But before that, with her injured leg, where she's barely mobile, she's suddenly able to make a 20-foot leap onto a moving vehicle. Just the whiplash created by the back and forth of the show was crazy. And also, I didn't like how she's a bad person. We see numerous times that she is a bad person. And every now and then, they also try and make her seem like a good person. Pick a side. And on top of that, the other thing I can't buy is this concept that she left for New York 20 years prior to the show. Then she goes back to her hometown for, quite frankly, rubbish reasons. But literally, everyone there is like, Maya's back, and recognizes her. Even conveniently, the villain, one of the villains, the redneck a-hole, I just couldn't get behind that as a thing. Or the fact that the family, apparently, for generations, have had superpowers and kept that well under wraps. I think that's a wider problem with Marvel, though, at this point, where the wider context of things doesn't gel well with the rest of the universe they've created. So, a literal super-powered woman who can heal people with glowy hands? S.H.I.E.L.D. never approached her? Okay. On top of that, the show itself, structurally, I think the editing is pretty poor, especially with the audio. I did wonder if at points they were trying to make clever edits between being able to hear and Maya's perspective. But sometimes it's just bad and jarring. For instance, there's this sad moment where strings kick in and start playing, and instead of a natural endpoint or a good fade, the music has a very jarring quick fade in the middle of one of the chords. And I'm sat there thinking, hang on a minute, are we supposed to be sad? The strings have had like 5 seconds and you've just cut them. I think the final point, the final bullet point, is the finale itself, the last scene. I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say my knee-jerk response was to laugh at it. I just laughed at the sheer absurdity of it. Part of me wonders if the strike was to blame for this show and how bad it is. Like maybe we have another Heroes on our hands, where Heroes was great until there was a writer's strike. But, you know, if you want a film or something that has good representation of deaf people, then I highly recommend Coda or even Sound of Metal. I mean, it's about him losing his hearing rather than not having any to start with, but they are both great movies. And if you want something that has good representation of Indigenous American women, then Killers of the Flower Moon, or Prey, even, if you want something with a bit more fight in it. So yeah, I think Echo was a big miss for me, unfortunately.